What if the person you tried to save becomes the one who destroys your life? Elias had always believed that the most important moments in life arrive quietly, disguised as accidents. He used to say that fate rarely knocks, it prefers to slip through the cracks when you're too distracted to notice. But that was before the autumn evening when he met the one person who would turn his life into a labyrinth of regret, guilt, and irreversible mistakes. Back then, Elias was a quiet man, someone who found comfort in routine. He worked at a small repair shop near the edge of town, went home every night to a silent apartment, heated leftovers, and watched documentaries he barely remembered by morning. He wasn't exactly lonely, at least that's what he told himself, but he lived gently, carefully, as though anything too intense might bruise him. Still, he had a vague, persistent longing for something to happen, something that would break the monotony. He didn't imagine life would take his wish so literally. It began on a chilly Thursday. The air smelled of wet leaves, and the streetlights flickered the way they always did before the city finally replaced the bulbs. Elias was locking up the shop when he saw her, Lydia, sitting on the curb across the road, her face buried in her trembling hands. At first, he hesitated. People in trouble weren't unusual in that neighborhood. Sometimes it was better not to get involved. But something about the way her shoulders shuddered, as though she was trying to keep herself from breaking apart, tugged at him. He walked over slowly, announcing his presence with a gentle, "Are you all right?" so she wouldn't be startled. She lifted her head, revealing eyes that were red from crying but sharp, so sharp they almost seemed to glow with anger or fear. He couldn't tell which. She looked him over quickly, calculating, as though deciding whether he was a threat or a lifeline. "Do I look all right?" she muttered. The bitterness in her voice wasn't directed at him, he realized. It was directed at the world. Elias almost walked away, but then she added, softer, "Sorry. No, I'm not all right." He offered to call someone, a friend or a relative. She shook her head with a humorless laugh. "There's no one to call." After a few minutes of silence, Elias found himself doing something deeply uncharacteristic. He invited her inside the shop so she could warm up while she pulled herself together. Lydia accepted with a small shrug, as though she had nothing left to lose. Inside, under the faded yellow lights, she seemed even more fragile up close, but there was something else there too. A restlessness, a fire, something that made her presence feel dangerously alive. She wandered around the shop while he made tea, running her fingers across the dusty shelves, examining old radios and broken appliances as if they were clues to someone's life. "You fix things," she said when he handed her the steaming mug. "Maybe you can fix me too." She smiled in a way that was meant to be playful but carried an unmistakable edge of desperation. Elias laughed awkwardly, unsure how to respond. He didn't know her, but the moment felt strangely intimate, like he had stepped into a story that wasn't his. He ended up walking her halfway home that night, even though she insisted she was fine. They talked about small things, music she liked, the way he preferred staying invisible, the simple comfort he found in repairing objects other people had given up on. She told him she admired that. She said it so sincerely that Elias felt something stir in him, something warm and reckless. It was only later, long after he learned who she truly was and what she was capable of, that he realized her sincerity was as dangerous as everything else hidden beneath her smile. Over the next weeks, they saw each other more often. Sometimes she appeared at the shop unexpectedly, other times she waited for him outside his apartment building as if she simply couldn't face the night alone. She never explained what had been wrong the first evening they met. Elias didn't push, he liked being the one she trusted, the one she came to. It made him feel needed in a way he hadn't felt in years. But little by little, her presence began to stretch itself through every part of his life. She would call him late at night, crying or panicked, and he would rush to her without thinking. She asked him for small favors, rides, money for food, a place to sleep when she claimed she had nowhere else. Each request seemed reasonable, but together they formed a pattern that Elias didn't want to see until it was too late. One night, Lydia appeared at his apartment door trembling violently, insisting someone had been following her. Her fear seemed so real that Elias didn't hesitate to let her in. She stayed for 3 days. She slept on his couch, paced around his living room, jumped at every sound. On the 4th morning, he woke up to find his wallet missing and the front door half open. His stomach dropped. His first instinct was to call the police, but he didn't. Something deep inside him refused to believe she had betrayed him. And indeed, she returned later that afternoon, smelling of cigarette smoke and cold air, her eyes unfocused. When he confronted her, she laughed and admitted she borrowed the money but insisted she'd pay him back. "I just needed it," she said simply, as though that explained everything. Elias should have ended it right there. Any rational person would have. Instead, he accepted her apology like a man accepting a rope disguised as affection. Soon after, Elias began noticing strange things happening around him. A man came into the shop asking aggressive questions about Lydia. His apartment door was scratched, as if someone had tried to force it open. Once, while walking home, he sensed someone tailing him, though he never saw a face. When he told Lydia, she grew pale and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you into this." She refused to explain further, no matter how many times he asked. The more mysterious she became, the more protective Elias felt. That was her trap. Whether intentional or not, she made him feel like a hero in a story he wasn't built for. One evening, everything came crashing down. Lydia arrived at the shop close to closing time, breathing hard, her hair tangled, her jacket torn. "We have to go," she said urgently. "Right now." Her voice trembled with real fear this time, not the dramatic kind he had seen before. Elias didn't argue. He closed the shop without counting the cash, grabbed his keys, and followed her into the night like a man stepping into a storm without an umbrella. She told him they needed to drive to the outskirts of town. She needed to meet someone, settle something, and then everything would be all right. Elias didn't like it, but he couldn't turn her away. As they drove, Lydia grew more agitated, mumbling to herself, checking the rearview mirror repeatedly. Her hand shook so badly she asked him to pull over. They stopped at an abandoned gas station, its fluorescent lights flickering like dying fireflies. Lydia stepped out and told him to stay in the car. Elias waited 5 minutes before the unease grew unbearable. He followed her tracks behind the building, and that's when he saw her arguing with two men. Their voices were sharp, cutting through the cold night air. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw the moment everything went wrong. Lydia lunged forward, whether out of anger or desperation, he didn't know, and one of the men shoved her violently. She fell against the wall with a cry. Without thinking, without planning, Elias ran toward them shouting. One of the men turned toward him, and something flashed in his hand. A weapon? A knife? Elias never saw it clearly. All he knew was the panic, the sudden explosive rush of adrenaline. He grabbed the man's arm, shoved him back. It all happened in seconds. The man tripped on a piece of broken concrete and fell, striking his head with a sickening sound. The other man cursed and ran, disappearing into the darkness. Lydia stood frozen, eyes wide with shock. The man on the ground wasn't moving. Elias knelt beside him, hands shaking so violently he could barely touch the man's neck to check for a pulse. There wasn't one. His vision blurred. He tasted metal in his mouth. This wasn't real, he told himself. It couldn't be real. But Lydia grabbed his shoulders and forced him to look at her. "We need to go," she whispered. "Now." He stared at her in disbelief. "We need to call an ambulance," he said, though he knew it was already too late. "We need to explain." "Explain what?" She hissed. "That you killed him. That you stepped into something that had nothing to do with you?" Her voice was breaking. "Please. Elias. Don't ruin your life more than you already have." Her words struck him like blows. His life. His future. His freedom. The world tilted beneath his feet. Before he could process anything, Lydia dragged him back toward the car. He followed like a man underwater, unable to breathe or think. They drove for nearly an hour in silence. Eventually, Lydia made him stop near a dark field where she ordered him to throw away anything that might connect him to what had happened. His jacket, his gloves, even the small screwdriver he had used earlier that evening. Elias obeyed because he didn't know what else to do. By the time they returned to the city, dawn was crawling across the sky like a thin stain of pink and grey. The next days were a blur of nausea, fear, and sleepless nights. Elias couldn't eat. He couldn't focus at work. He kept expecting the police to show up, kept imagining the sound of sirens outside his window. Lydia, meanwhile, became distant. She stopped answering his calls, stopped visiting his apartment. When he finally saw her again, she looked different, colder, harder, like someone who had already chosen her survival over anyone else's. "It's done," she told him. "You need to forget me. Forget everything." He stared at her helplessly. I did this for you." "No," she said softly. "You did this because you wanted to be needed." It was the cruelest truth she could have spoken. She walked away that day, and Elias never saw her again. But the consequences of that night followed him like shadows stitched to his heels. The police questioned him eventually. They questioned everyone in the area. Elias lied with such trembling awkwardness that he was sure they knew he was hiding something. But there was no evidence, nothing to link him to the man behind the gas station. Still, the guilt haunted him relentlessly. He started drinking, stopped going to work, avoided mirrors because every time he looked into his own eyes he saw a stranger, someone capable of taking a life. The encounter that had once seemed like fate, a spark, a possibility, had instead become a curse. Lydia had changed everything, but not in the way he had once imagined. Not all life-changing meetings bring hope or love or redemption. Some bring chaos disguised as vulnerability. Some wrap themselves around your life so tightly you don't notice you're suffocating until there's nowhere left. Years later, Elias still walks past the edge of town sometimes, where the streetlights flicker and the air smells of damp leaves. He retraces the night he first saw her, replaying the moment he ignored the warning in her trembling shoulders. He no longer asks why. He knows that sometimes the worst moments in life don't begin with screams or violence. They begin quietly, with a simple question spoken to the wrong person at the wrong time. "Are you all right?" And the answer changes everything. Months passed, but for Elias time had begun to move strangely, sometimes crawling so slowly it felt frozen, sometimes rushing so fast he couldn't catch his breath. The night behind the abandoned gas station lived inside him like a parasite, feeding on every quiet moment he had left. The guilt wasn't loud, it didn't scream. It whispered. It waited. It dug itself into the softest parts of his mind and made a home there. No matter where he went, the memory followed. He tried to live as if nothing had happened. He woke up, made coffee he never finished, stared blankly at the morning news. At work, he held tools with hands that seemed to belong to someone else, someone unstable, unreliable. He began making mistakes. Crossing wires, dropping parts, forgetting simple steps he had done for years. His boss, an older man named Gregory, noticed immediately. "You all right?" Gregory asked one afternoon. The same question Elias had once asked Lydia. The same question that had started everything. He lied, of course. Said he was just tired. But Gregory wasn't convinced. "You're not the same lately," he said gently. "You look like you're carrying around a ghost." Elias wanted to laugh. If only it was just one ghost. At night, he avoided sleep as long as he could. When exhaustion finally forced him into unconsciousness, he dreamed of that man's lifeless eyes, of Lydia's trembling voice telling him to run, of the sound, God, the sound, when the man's skull hit the concrete. He woke drenched in sweat, shivering even when wrapped in blankets. One night, the dream changed. It wasn't the man he saw anymore. It was Lydia. She stood several feet away from him, half lit by the ghostly flicker of the dream streetlights, her face unreadable. "You should have left me there," she whispered. Elias jolted awake, heart pounding, a single question echoing in his mind. Had she been right? Weeks later, something finally snapped. It was a quiet evening. Elias had closed the shop early, unable to focus. He walked aimlessly through the city, letting the cold air numb him. He ended up near the outskirts, where the buildings thinned out and the silence felt heavier, almost expectant. That was when he saw her. Lydia. She was standing near a bus stop, arms crossed, staring at the ground. Her hair was shorter now, unevenly cut, as if she'd done it herself in a hurry. She looked thinner, worn down, her once fierce eyes dulled by exhaustion. Yet there was still something in her presence that grabbed him, a pull, a gravity he didn't understand and hated himself for feeling. He approached slowly. "Lydia." She flinched at his voice, then turned. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The months of absence hung between them like a thick fog. "What are you doing here?" she finally asked, her voice hoarse. "I could ask you the same," Elias replied softly. "I thought you left." "I tried," she said with a hollow laugh. Turns out I'm not very good at leaving things behind. The irony struck him too deeply to ignore. They sat on the bench, and for a long moment, Lydia said nothing. Then, quietly, she asked, "Does it still haunt you?" "Every day," he answered without hesitation. She nodded, as if she already knew. "You shouldn't have followed me that night." You told me to stay in the car. And you didn't. Elias clenched his fists. You were in danger. You didn't even know who those men were, she snapped, then softened. You still don't. He swallowed. Then tell me. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time he saw something raw in her eyes, shame. They weren't looking for me, she said. Not exactly. I owed them money. A lot of it. I kept promising I'd pay, but then I'd fall apart. Spend it. Run. Make excuses. They were tired of waiting. What did you do with the money I gave you? Elias asked. She lowered her eyes. The same thing I did with all the others. I never meant to use you. I just didn't know where else to go. Her honesty didn't hurt as much as he expected. Maybe because he already knew. Maybe because some truths settle long before they are spoken. You dragged me into something that ruined my life, Elias said, his voice quiet but steady. Lydia's eyes glistened. I know. Why didn't you tell the truth that night? Because you were already drowning, she whispered. And for a moment, it felt good not to drown alone. The wind blew softly, carrying the last leaves of autumn across the street. Elias watched them fall, one by one, each landing without a sound. What now? He asked. Lydia breathed out slowly. Now you walk away. Far. As far as you can. You tell no one you saw me. You forget I ever existed. He stared at her. You know I can't do that. You can, she said firmly. And you will. Because if you don't, everything that happened will happen again. To you. To someone else. I can't keep destroying people who are only trying to help me. Her voice broke. Elias realized with startling clarity that Lydia wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't even asking for understanding. She was asking for an ending. Goodbye, Elias, she whispered, standing up. He grabbed her wrist instinctively. Where will you go? She shook her head. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere I can't hurt anyone anymore. Do you really think running will fix anything? No, she said. But staying won't either. She pulled her hand gently from his grasp and walked away. Her figure grew smaller and smaller, swallowed by the dim streetlights until she disappeared completely. Elias sat alone on the bench long after she was gone. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He didn't chase after her. He simply sat there, realizing that the worst tragedies aren't always loud or violent. Sometimes they are quiet. Sometimes they feel like watching the one person who ruined your life walk away for the last time, and knowing that despite everything, a small part of you hopes she finds peace. When Elias finally stood, he felt no closure. No relief. Only a strange, heavy acceptance. That meeting, his moment of fate, had changed his life forever. Not in the way fairy tales or hopeful stories claim meetings change us. Not with love. Not with purpose. But with lessons carved so deeply they would never fade. Sometimes the people we try to save are the ones who drown us. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is not losing someone, but meeting them in the first place. And Elias carried that truth with him as he walked back into a life forever altered, knowing some paths can never be undone, and some endings leave scars instead of peace. This is the end of my story. Stay with me, subscribe, and see you again.